Good afternoon to all of you here in Geneva and online. It is a great pleasure to welcome all of you to this international conference on AI and trust. I am delighted that we, the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, are co-hosting this event together with Switzerland's Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, FDFA, and also that our sister organizations, standard development organizations, ISO and ITU, with which the IEC cooperates very closely under the umbrella of the World Standards Corporation, WSC, are also here with us today. We will hear from the Secretary General of ISO, Sergio Mujica, and from the Director of ITU's Telecommunications Standardization Bureau, Dr. Chai Sabli, in a minute. How legislation, standardization, and conformity assessment interplay to build trust in AI is the theme that we will be addressing over the next day and a half. Today, you will hear different stakeholders' perspective on how that interplay works, but also on where there may be gaps. Tomorrow will be more hands-on with 3 use case sessions focusing on healthcare, sensor technology, and industrial robotics and automation. Before I hand over to my colleague Ambassador Roger Dubach of the Swiss Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, I would like to say just a few words about the international organization that I am privileged to serve as Secretary General and CEO. IEC was founded more than 100 years ago and is based here in Geneva with regional centers around the world. We are the leader in the elaboration and publication of international standards for electrical, electronic, and related technologies. We are a global not-for-profit membership organization, providing a neutral and independent institutional framework to over 170 countries and coordinating the work of more than 20,000 experts. We also manage 4 IEC conformity assessment systems, which together represent the world's largest working multilateral agreement based on on-time, one-time testing of products. IEC experts from across the world develop best-in-class, internationally agreed solutions that embody the contributions from industry, academia, governmental and non-governmental organizations, and testing laboratories. Although technology is the focus of our work, our challenges are not purely technical, and that is one of the reasons why we are here today. There is an increasing expectation indeed that IEC standards and conformity assessment systems should address the needs of society as a whole and find solutions that can tackle the societal challenges ahead, as well as the ethical dilemmas that are sometimes generated by emerging technologies. Artificial intelligence in particular requires inputs from a much larger pool of experts. We can see this happening in the work of the joint IEC and ISO Committee on AI, where ethicists, lawyers, social scientists, and others are participating in standardization work to tackle topics such as trustworthiness and bias in algorithms. Indeed, they have been developing standards since 2017 that address the entire AI ecosystem, from foundational concepts and data standards to reference architecture, use cases, and application guidelines. Just this year, the IEC and ISO experts have already produced guidelines on algorithms, the governance of AI in organizations, And very shortly, we expect to see a groundbreaking publication on the ethics of AI. This really drives home the point that international standards cannot be developed in a vacuum, but must also consider the potential societal repercussions that new technologies may engender. While we can and do provide advice on how to approach ethical issues, it is of course not our role to make ethical judgments about the use of specific technologies. What we offer to policymakers, regulators, researchers, and other relevant stakeholders is a platform to strengthen the dialogue between all parties in order to ensure that we are fully cognizant of their potential impact. With this AI with Trust conference, we also expect to draw the contours around the need for a new platform that can complement and enhance the work that we already do. Our entire history has been about facilitating collaboration internationally to develop consensus-based standards. We realize, though, that especially where AI and other emergent technologies are concerned, there is a huge amount of work happening in parallel across many organizations, which to us means that there is tremendous potential for identifying and, where possible, utilizing synergies. As well as the ongoing discussions with the FDFA, we also hope to leverage the special status of Geneva, which is home to so many of the world's best known and most important international organizations. They tackle some of the biggest challenges facing the planet, from the environment and health to humanitarian assistance and global trade. At this conference, over the next 2 days, you will hear from the ICRC, from ILO and WHO, just to name a few, which are among other global organizations, of course, based in the city. And you will hear more about the platform we are proposing tomorrow, in the belief that by pooling our expertise and insights, together we can achieve great things. Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank our outstanding speakers for giving their time and insights today and tomorrow. I wish all of you here in Geneva and the participants online a stimulating, useful, and also delightful conference. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this conference on behalf of the Swiss government. We are happy to have you joining us in person or online. The title of this conference is AI with Trust. What does this mean exactly? Actually, I think of AI and trust quite often, mostly when I'm driving my car. I don't own a fancy car, and of course it's not self-driving, but it has a few assistance systems like lane keeping on the motorway. Questions of legality of such a system don't come to my mind while I'm driving, also because I know that I'm fully responsible for my driving. Neither do I question the safety of these systems. But do I trust the lane keep assistant? Most of the times, yes. It works actually quite well. It recognizes the lane in different circumstances, with sun, rain, or by night. I've learned to know when it performs well and less so. Therefore, I trust it works well in almost all conditions. But I still have to be attentive for unexpected situations. So this little example shows that questions around safety, responsibility, and with this standardization, conformity assessment, and legality occurs immediately. Artificial intelligence challenges existing regulatory mechanisms, either by its nature, because we don't quite know how it works, or its speed of implementation. Many national and international actors have therefore raised their voices, demanding AI to be regulated, have issued recommendations, white papers, or opinions. Actors at all levels, from government to civil society, revolve around the same questions on how IA should or should not be regulated, what an ethical use of IA is, and so on. The Swiss government has taken note of the evolution of this discussion and has adopted recently a report which gives an overview of the emerging regulatory framework at the international level. One key takeaway of this report is that the same concerns and principles, especially the ethical ones, are discussed at all different levels and in many different fora, but with almost no interconnection and exchange amongst each other. Take privacy, for instance. There are standards for companies to show they have implemented information security and privacy requirements. But when we talk to companies which have implemented such procedures, we hear their fear of still being subject to penalties and under data protection law. Here we see a sort of mismatch between standards and the law. Implementing standardized procedures and even possibly undergoing certification does not mean compliance. So what is then the goal of this conference? Secretary General Philippe already said, but for me personally, there are also three other objectives, or three complementary objectives. We need to talk to each other. We need to find a common language between technicians and lawyers and experts from around the world, from different fields of